Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at lesson 90. The title of the lesson is Mixed Number and Negative Coefficients. So some of this we've already seen in previous lessons, but we're going to just kind of go one step further here and talk about a different kind of coefficient. Before we actually get started, though, I wanted to kind of address with you, we're going to be ready for test 17. I'm still trying to figure out how we can have a study session, so just bear with me. I'll be sending your parents an email to let them know the plan. I might be moving the test to Friday. So I will keep you posted through email to your parents about that. But for now, let's go ahead and stick with just doing lesson 90 together today. Okay, so please pull up the math packet lesson sheet for lesson 90. Hopefully you have that printed and you're ready to go. We're going to be looking at a couple examples together. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead down to the bottom of my document and start off with an example that you do not need to put in your notes. I want to recall some information with you. We've seen problems that look like this, where we have, oops, just a second here. It'd help if I turn on my Apple Pen. Okay. We've seen problems where we have a coefficient that looks like this with our variable. Okay, so there's an example problem that we've seen before. Remember that in any algebra problem, the goal is to isolate x. And how do we do that? Well, we take whatever the coefficient is, which in this case it's 4/5, and we figure out what can I do to 4/5 in order to make that 1? What can I multiply with to make it 1 so I have 1x, which would then isolate my x? Well, we talked about in past lessons, you guys have already been doing this, we multiply by the reciprocal of 4/5 because that's going to cancel it out, because 5 times 4 is 20 and 4 times 5 is 20. So obviously we would have 20 over 20, which is 1x. But remember, in algebra, we have to keep our equation balanced. So if I'm going to multiply by 5/4 on one side of my equation, I must do it on the other side as well. I'm going to go ahead and put 7 over 1. Okay, so the answer here would be, I've got just my x left here. So that would be x equals 35/4. Okay, and that's nothing new. We've been doing that for a while. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into your notes with you. So look at example 1 with me at the top of your page, and I'm going to expand this so you can see it. Okay, so in this column we have mixed number coefficients. Okay, so we're going to talk about that first. Example 1 is 3 1/3 x equals 5. Okay, so it looks, it's similar to the problem that we just did a moment ago, or that I did with you, or showed you. But we're going to turn this mixed number into an improper fraction. So we take 3 times 3 is 9, plus the 1 is 10/3. And we have our x equals 5. Now that format looks exactly like the one that I just did for you down here, where we had 4/5 x equals 7. But on this problem, we have 10/3 x equals 5. So let's handle it exactly the same way. So in order to isolate x, I'm going to multiply by 3/10 on both sides of my equation. I'm going to stick 5 over 1 just to make it a comfortable look. Okay, I have x, and I can cross cancel here. So I have 1 times 3 on the top and 1 times 2 on the bottom. So our answer there would be 3/2. Let's look at example 2, which is right below that. It's the same style of problem. We're going to look here. I have 2 1/2 y equals 1 7/8. We're going to turn both of those into improper fractions. So if we take 2 1/2 and turn that into an improper fraction, we would end up with 5/2 y equals, and we're going to take 1 7/8 and turn that into an improper fraction, and we would end up with 15/8. Okay, so there we have the same format that we've been working with. It's a little more comfortable looking now. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to isolate our variable, which is y, by multiplying by the reciprocal of 5/2 on both sides of our equation. These cancel. I just have my y left on the left-hand side. And I can do some cross-canceling here, so I'm going to go ahead and work that out here. Okay, so and then I would have, as my answer, I would have 3/4 as my answer there. All right, that takes care of working out some mixed number coefficients. So remember that the step that we really need to focus on is taking that mixed number and turning it into an improper fraction. We multiply by the reciprocal of that number to isolate our variable, and then we can work the problem from there. Over to the right, example 3, we're going to be looking at some negative coefficients and how that works. Okay, first, before we do that, I'm going to go on back down to the bottom of my sheet here. Let me make this a little smaller here, and I'm going to erase what I've got down here and start a new problem. Okay, so let's say we have a problem that looks like this. We have negative 3x equals 126. All right, there's two ways that we can solve this problem. The first way would be simply to isolate our variable. So I want to isolate x. I need to do something with that negative 3. I can divide by negative 3 because negative 3 divided by negative 3 is a positive 1. So I could do it that way, where I would have x equals 126 over negative 3. And when I do the math on that, when I do my division, 126 divided by 3 is 42. And we're dividing a positive number by a negative number, so our answer would be negative. So we would have negative 42. Or another way to do this problem, let me rewrite it over here, is I can think of this negative 3 as a fraction. I'm going to put it over 1 because that's the format that we've been working with today already. And in order to isolate x here, I could simply multiply by a negative 1/3 because that's going to isolate my variable as well. Notice that we multiply by the negative. We use the negative inside our the reciprocal of negative 3, and we also did that in this one. We divided by negative 3 because remember, negative 3 in this one, negative 3 divided by negative 3 gave us the positive 1 or a positive x. Same thing here. You divide, when you multiply a negative times a negative, you get a positive, okay, which is our goal for our x. We want our x to be positive. Okay, now I have 126 over 1, multiplying it with a negative 1/3. I just know that that's 42. You would have to do the math on that yourself. This is negative here. So 42 times a negative 1 is negative 42. Okay, so you see there's two different ways to do that. Whichever one is comfortable for you is fine. It doesn't matter which way you use because you'll end up with the same result. So let's go ahead and look at a couple examples to put into your notes. Example 3, we have negative. Please notice there's a negative right here. Okay, it was a little hard for me to get that typed in there properly, but just make sure that you see that that is a negative there. All right, so let's take negative 2/3 x equals 4/5. All right, I'm going to rewrite that down here. And you can do the same in your notes. Okay, so this looks pretty comfortable, the format. We know that we want to multiply by the reciprocal of negative 2/3, and the reciprocal of that would be negative 3/2. Okay, so these would cancel. I get a positive x, and then I can do some cross-canceling here. And I would end up, here's a positive 2/5. Here's what you have left. Positive 2/5 times negative 3 over 1. Oops, what happened there? Hold on a second. I'm not sure what happened there. Let's go back to this. X equals, we have 2/5. There we go. Times, sorry about that, guys, negative 3 over 1 now. So what is our answer here? We have 2 times the negative 3 is negative 6 over 5. And our answer then would be x is equal to negative 6 over 5, or 6/5, negative 6/5. Okay? Example 4, we're going to look at negative 5x equals 0.24. Negative coefficient here, our negative 5 is the negative coefficient. All right, so we're going to be able to take this problem and divide. We want to isolate the x, so in order to do that, we can divide by a -5 on both sides. For me, that's the way I like to do. Now you could have multiplied by the reciprocal of the fraction -5 over 1. If you chose to do that, you could have certainly done that. I find it easier to just divide by the number that's already there, the coefficient that's already placed there, because that's going to easily give me a +1. So my x now is isolated. Now I have to do some math over here. Now think about this. I have a positive number dividing by a negative number. So I know my answer is going to be negative. So let's go over here and do the math. So I have 0.24, and I'm dividing by 5. You see, I'm going to have to add a 0 on here. Okay, so if you do the math on that, you're going to end up with 0.048, and that would be your answer. It's going to be a negative. Okay, guys, so that's basically the entire lesson for today. Have fun working those out. Just remember that when you have a negative number, you divide using the negative. See how we did the negative here? We didn't divide by just 5. We divided by -5. So just remember. Whoops, I didn't really want to do that. See if I can get that to come back here. There we go. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm learning this method myself, so you have to bear with me a little bit. But anyway, just remember that when you're isolating the variable on a negative coefficient, you're going to multiply or divide by the negative. So the negative travels with whatever you're doing to isolate that variable. So in example 4, we didn't divide -5x by just 5, we divided by a -5. So just keep that in mind. And then on the mixed number coefficients, you take those mixed numbers and turn those into improper fractions, and then you can work the problem from there. Okay, so if you have any questions, please by all means send me a message on Edmodo. Also, you guys are doing a great job sending your lessons to me. It would be helpful if you guys have the ability at home to scan those in and send those. Please make sure that you send them privately to me on Edmodo's message, and you would put me in there as a recipient. If you post it just to our group, then you're posting your lesson for all to see, and I would prefer that you not do that. If you will just send those to me privately, that would be appreciated. I am going to sit down and figure out how to grade these on here and then send those back, and that's why I'm just going to try to extend some things as we're all trying to figure this out a little bit together. Okay, so that ends it for today. Have a great day, and please, again, if you have questions, let me know through Edmodo. Thanks, guys.